Zero Foxtrot does not profess to share or promote the opinions and beliefs expressed by show host or guests. The Stay Zero podcast was created to provide a platform for servicemen and women to share their stories. Due to the nature of this podcast, sensitive topics will arise. Conversations about combat, PTSD, drug use, and other such subjects will occur. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the Stay Zero podcast. I'm your host, Zach, and I have Jeremy Alexander here with me today. Thanks for coming in, man.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
And you are a canine officer, right?
Yes, sir.
Which is pretty much the coolest of any cop job that there is.
I think so.
How did you get into that?
Well, that's a very long story, but it's a new program. It's specific. So DPS, we've had canines for quite a long time, but only narcotics, and they're only single purpose. But due to the crisis on the border, they implemented a new canine tracking program, and it's only been operational for about a year, and that's when I got into it.
Okay. But you were a Marine, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you canine with the Marine Corps?
I did not, but
let's dive into that. Let's start with wherever that journey begins for you. When did you join?
Well, I signed up in 2004, and I became a light armor reconnaissance crewman.
Okay.
Still no experience with canines there, but did my time there. So I deployed with them twice to Iraq. Really enjoyed it, but while doing that, I saw recon Marines, and that's where I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to go be a recon Marine and everything, but they weren't open. It was closed out. I mean, you're a Marine too, right? So
yeah. I remember like SOI, they had an in-doc if you wanted to sign up. I was more of the non-swimming type. I swim for fun, not for hazing. So I went the sniper route. But did they not have the in-doc available for you guys, or were they just not letting you take it?
So when I signed up for the Marine Corps, I just knew I wanted to do infantry. I didn't know anything about it. Yeah. I just knew, in my mind, all Marines were elite. They were all the best, which they are. But, when I went through SOI and they started breaking off into the different MOSs, they asked who has a driver's license. And I raised my hand.
Who didn't have a driver's license?
I guess there was actually quite a few Marines in SOI at that time that didn't. But,
wow.
But I was broken up into a group, and the best I recall, they were like, hey, who's got a driver's license? And I raised my hand. And they were like, you're going to be an LAV crewman. And I was like, no.
Learned that lesson, didn't you?
Yeah.
Never raise your hand and volunteer for anything.
Exactly. So they were like, wait, no, you're going to LAR. And I was like, what is LAR? I've never even heard of that. And they were like, oh, it's basically recon. It's light armored recon, except you don't have to carry everything everywhere. And I was like,
what do the recon guys think about that?
Well, nobody really knew anything about it. And so I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. I can do, recon's in the name. It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I know, I'm in a school scrubbing rust off of a sort of a tank, but with tires,
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So actually,
switcheroo.
Yeah, they got me. But so I tried to actually get out of it and tried to go back to, the recon route for the screener.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my instructors, and I can't remember his name, I wish I could, but he pulled me aside and was like, look, man, like, we get it. You want to do other things, but stick it out, give it a shot, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. And he was right. So I went to first LAR, and I showed up shortly after they had gotten back from Iraq. And there's some really good guys from my class. We all went together, and I'm still really good friends with them to this day. But we showed up, and I remember we called it the grinder, in between the barracks, the different companies. And
oh, yeah.
We're walking down there, and there's these dudes all along the catwalks just, fresh meat, what's up, And I was like, man, this is no joke. And I guess they just had a pretty rough deployment over there in Iraq. But so we were the boot drop,
Yeah.
We were the new guys. And
it's a fun place to be, right?
Right.
The new guy.
Yeah. So we went right into a workup. I started out as a driver, being a LAV crewman. My first deployment, I started out as a driver for, we call it Red 1, first platoon, Red 1. So I drove the platoon commander. And at that time, the platoons were 4 LAV 25s. And honestly, I fell in love, like you get to off-road all day, every day. shoot big guns. I mean, it was really cool.
Did y'all have the 20 millimeter on there?
25.
25.
Yeah, so it's a round about the size of a beer bottle. So
Nice.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, as a driver, at first I was like, man, I don't want to be a driver, but that really is. I had a really good gunner, and my gunner, really a lot of really good guys in general with a lot of experience, and so they kind of took me under the wing and wanted to train me up to be a future gunner, and so I got a lot of time on the gun, and the Bushmaster chain gun is pretty cool, So
What caliber is that?
it's 25.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is the Canon.
The Bushmaster chain gun. Yeah,
Nice.
it's and what was cool is like you can switch between high explosive rounds, and then they have armor piercing incendiary. But once we went to Iraq, we kind of learned that the slugs, it's like a training practice round. It's essentially just a solid chunk of metal, a slug.
Mm.
And over there in the Middle East, everything's cinder blocks and concrete and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'd use the slugs to kind of knock the walls down and then get the HE in there. It's pretty cool.
That is cool.
So,
Funny what you figure out, isn't it?
yeah, it's crazy how Marines are so adaptive.
Yeah.
Like you kind of work with what you got and figure things out. But so yeah,
You
we
were
all
first LAR, and
Yeah,
then you got to
first LAR.
deploy with them.
Yeah, I did 2 deployments to Iraq with them.
Okay.
The first one was really cool.
Where'd you go?
Yeah, so we started out in Korean Village.
Dude, that's where I was at.
Yeah, man, you look real familiar.
I was the first push from Kuwait. We drove in 7 tons. We're sitting on our packs and our guns over the side of the truck from Kuwait all the way through Iraq.
To Korean Village.
And we settled. It wasn't Korean Village when we first took it over. I can't remember the name of it, but it was just a bunch of blown out buildings. And I remember when we got there, we'd been sleeping on the ground for 2 weeks because wherever we would drive and then we would stop, we would just lay on the ground and sleep. We'd get back in the trucks and drive the next day. When we got there, all those buildings were blown out and just full of rubble and broken concrete and rebar and glass and shit. And so we were like, dude, I don't want to sleep. Plus it was hotter in the room than it was outside. So we all laid our beds right outside, and we woke up the next morning and counted like 14 mortars that had been shot at us at night and stuck in the ground around us, and none of them went off.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I was taking a piss by the concertina wire. I'm like, what is this? Like,
Just
when did that
fins.
get there? And it's just this round with fins coming out of the back. And we had to call EOD, and none of them went off. But Korean Village, man, I was doing raids in Aruba in 2004.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so that's really cool. Yeah, so that first deployment was pretty awesome, though. We started out in Al Asad Air Base. Like, that's where we got all the vehicles, and I think they trucked them in. Because were you in the invasion then, or?
No, I wasn't in the invasion, but I mean, it was February of 2004, so it wasn't real
So right
long after. We were still
before
driving in.
Yeah, because I think we got there in 2005. And so we met up with the vehicles in like Kuwaiti Naval Base,
Mm.
and then they had to tractor trailer them to Al Asad. And then once they got there, we offloaded them, and that was my first time getting mortared. Was there at Al Asad, and
Yeah.
I was like, "What are those big giant dust clouds and those loud noises up there?" And they were like, "Everybody get down!" So, but I didn't know what it was at first, and I didn't realize until they started kind of getting them closer. But
Did you ever hear how they were doing that and us not catching them?
from what I understand, they were like keeping an eye out for people pacing out,
So
distances and stuff.
it took us forever to figure this out because we were using radar, and it goes back to the poo sites, and we're barreling out to the desert, and you just find a mortar tube and a bunch of water on the ground.
The ice.
They were using ice. They would set a round in the tube, and they put a block of ice, and then as the ice melted and they were gone, it would drop and go.
And that was because we would counter artillery.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they actually did that a lot on the second deployment. But
Were you in Korean Village the second one as well, or?
no, so, back to the first one, what was really cool was being an LAR, we called them our chariots of war, like chariot. And we were like a bunch of gypsies. And I actually just read this book again, but Killing Rommel, about the Long Range Desert Group.
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Like British SAS and the Long Range Desert Group in North Africa. But that's kind of what it reminded me of, because we would launch from Korean Village, and we went all over that area, you know, Ramadi and all the cities in between. And we took part in Operation Steel Curtain, which was Usaba. And I think we started out of Al-Qaim there. But, I mean, there wasn't very many places in Al-Anbar province that we didn't go.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really cool.
What was your primary mission when you were getting the call to go do something? I know there's a lot of MSR security, at least where we were, because that's basically all there was giant highways they tried to blow you up on, other than a root bow. What was your mission when you were going around?
So my first introduction to recon was that deployment. And at the time, I didn't know, I know this now, but at the time I didn't. I just knew there were a bunch of recon dudes, but it was Det 1 guys, like the founders of MARSOC.
Yep.
And super professional, super cool dudes. And they were like, hey, where's the driver for this vehicle? And that was me, you know, and I'm like a Lance Corporal, you know, and like these guys are like gods to me.
I know the feeling. I went to sniper school with a few.
Yeah,
they're solid.
And they were just so professional. And they were linking up with me, this Lance Corporal, to do rehearsals on my vehicle because we were going to insert them, you know. And so yeah, they spent a bunch of time just learning the vehicle, doing rehearsals, and asking me questions like, hey, where's your where's your extra ammo? Where's your med kits? You know, if we get hit with an IED, how do we get out? You know, solid questions.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away by how professional they were and how they treated me. You know, not like
you
could tell they were high-ranking guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But they didn't treat me like, you know, a normal first sergeant or.
Oh yeah.
And so that was my first introduction to them. But for the most part, what we did was for like Operation Steel Curtain, we did kind of support by fire position. So the grunts would move through, you know, they push through like east to west or west to east. I can't remember the cardinal direction, but and then we would set up online outside the city, and if they ran into trouble, they'd pop smoke and we'd take care of business for them, you know, and just kind of clear the path for them as they cleared the cities. And then we actually had to enter the city, and it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild. But yeah, that operation was. I've always been, you know, that's like the dragon I always tried chasing after that. You know,
yeah.
Well, it was never that good.
Yeah.
Never again. And that's actually Steel Curtain was the first time I met a sniper too, because I was on turret watch at night. You know, once again, Lance Corporal. I have no idea what's going on, and all of a sudden I heard like a bush rustle next to the vehicle, and I was like, "What the heck is that?" And dude, and I just hear a shot, you know, a suppressed shot. And I was like, "Whoa, what is that?" And you know, I kind of freaked out, you know. And I had a 240 too.
Yeah.
And I kind of start to pivot over, you know, and kind of like PID what it was, and it was a sniper. Dude stands up, he just like takes off his ghillie veil, you know, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, bro?" You know, 1 down, 2 to go, you know, and then he just disappeared into the dark, and I was like, "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen."
Yeah.
That was pretty much that deployment in a nutshell. Like that operation was pretty awesome. Came back, did another workup, right back into another workup.
Yeah.
This time I'm a gunner, so worked up as a gunner, and that's where I started having a lot of fun. So my first deployment, my platoon, we only took 1 IED. My vehicle never got hit, but one of my best friends, his vehicle did, but everybody was fine, no big deal. The second deployment, this one when we went to Anna, one of my best friends, and we'll get to that, but he took a hit pretty hard. It was bad, and we responded, but it was right outside of Anna, and I remember it was a complex ambush. So
yeah, they got better as time went on.
Yeah, it was pretty smart what they did. It was a pressure plate IED, and I believe, you know, I'm pretty sure it was laced with chlorine or something like that, the gas.
Yeah.
Because I just remember like going to pull them out and the burning sensation and everything. But we started taking some pretty well-aimed fire from the town. And we'll get into this later too, but this is the first time I worked with aircraft. And so my platoon commander, at the time, he was a pretty motivated, hardcore dude. Well, he when they got hit, he jumps out of the vehicle and runs over there. So I'm the only one on the radio as his gunner. And the Harriers check in. They check in on the radio, and they're like, "Hey, what do you need from us? You need help? What do you need?" And I was like, "I'm a corporal. I have no idea what's going on." I was like, we're getting shot at from the town. And they were like, "All right, that's all we need to know." And those guys, I mean, low like they did a flyby. It's just so low, like it put my head down. Everybody was like, "What was that?" But the shooting stopped after that.
Yeah.
They made the shooting just stop because we didn't know where it was coming from.
Did they engage the town or just that flyby?
No, so there was
everybody.
There was grunts in the city too, and I can't remember what battalion it was or who it was. I do know that my senior drill instructor from boot camp was there because I ran into him. But
that's an awkward moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
I ran into the chief instructor of sniper school recently. I hadn't seen the guy in like 15 years, and I felt like I should have been at the position of attention. Like, and we're both, 40, 45 years old. It's like, hey, man.
Yeah, that's exactly how this was, man. This guy was like a silent drill team dude, just a picture perfect Marine,
Right.
like 6'3", just jacked. And when I saw him, you go right back to boot camp when you see those guys, or sniper school. But this guy was super cool. Nothing like what he was.
So how did you make that transition from LAR into recon?
Yeah, so that's interesting to me. I find it interesting. But so after that second deployment, I get back and I was going to get out. Because recon was still closed out. And I didn't know this at the time, but so the Marine Corps tried to FAP me out. I don't remember what FAP stands for, but that's where like if you're a short timer, they send you. Yeah. So they were going to send me to PMO. And I was like, no, man, I'm not doing that. So, so I went to 1st Marine Division schools and just, one of my buddies actually came up with this idea, but he was like, hey, man, the staff and COIC for Marine Division schools is an old LAV guy. So maybe go hit him up, and so I went in there as a corporal and like knocked on the door to this like master sergeant, maybe master guns, I don't know. But I was, I just kind of petitioned to him, like told him who I was, and they had some cool stuff there. They had Hearst Master, pre-sniper, machine gunners, courses, and I was like, yeah, if I'm gonna do something, I want to do something cool. So I just knocked on his door and told him who I was and what I was trying to do, and he was like, I got a spot for you, man, and he put me in Hearst Master school. So as an LAV crewman, like never even really ridden on a helicopter. I think maybe once.
Explain what Hearst Master is for.
Okay, yeah. So Hearst Master's helicopter rope suspension techniques, masters. So like the guys that are going to rig up your fast roping, rappelling, spy rigging, which is special patrol insertion, extraction. It's like, I don't know if I'm sure you've seen it, but like the big ropes hanging off helicopters that you clip into. It looks cool. It's not. It's really not fun. But yeah, so I didn't even know what that was either. So like I was like, okay, Hearst Master, that sounds awesome. I'll do that.
I'm
not knowing anything
about
it. Yeah. But so they sent me through to Bird Dog. Well, sent me through as a student, and then which it can be pretty difficult if you're because at the time you had to tie all the systems for time and everything, and it took me a little while to get the hang of it. Tying knots, just tying knots.
Yeah.
But so I passed, and then I was bird dog in my first class, watching the instructors just kind of being sort of an instructor, but just helping out, really, not a lead instructor in any form. And there was this gunny, and I can't remember his name for the life of me either. But this gunny was like, "Hey man, what are you doing here? What's your plans?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just kind of waiting to get out in EAS and then figure it out from there." And I really had no plans. And I told him, I was like, and I didn't know who he was, but I was like, I wanted to do recon, but they're closed out, and I don't want to go back to LAR. And he was like, well, don't get out of the Marine Corps, man. The Marine Corps started a new program called MARSOC. Take a look at that. And I did, and sure enough, they were taking applications for that, and I had no idea what it was, but I put in for it, and went through assessment selection, packed everything up, moved to the East Coast, went through ANS, had no idea what I was getting into, none whatsoever. And back then I was in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
So,
what was that like? How long was their, I guess, NDOC, their tryout or assessment?
I was there for 6 months or so, but at the time it wasn't the way it is now. They weren't raiders. It was right. Everything was so new. And I started out at what's called like a Marine Special Operations Advisory Group.
Okay.
And I still don't really know what I think it was more, they were trying to kind of do sort of what the Green Berets do, kind of their skill set.
Oh, okay.
From what I
Training
understand,
foreign
language
forces.
training,
Yeah.
like everybody kind of seemed to have their AO in the world.
Isn't it weird that we have so many redundancies from one service to the next? Like if the Army has that mission, why are we doing it?
Yeah, that's kind of what it seemed like to me at the time. But once again, I don't know anything about it.
Did you get to learn a language? And
I started to learn Russian. I don't remember any of it,
Wow.
but I started to get somewhat good at that. But for the most part, I was just getting smoked, working out every day.
Yeah.
A lot of CrossFit, which was new. Like CrossFit was kind of just coming out, or at least to me. And I was like, man, what is this weird movement we're doing? Like, this is crazy. But it was good. So I got in pretty good shape. And so then I went through selection, and I think it was 2 weeks total at the time, but I made it through. Ruck running, team evaluations, and like individual like leadership evaluation stuff. But the ruck running was new to me. The navigation was new to me. And that's probably the best navigation course I've ever been through. One of the best. Yeah.
Talking about land navigation.
Land navigation. Like point A to point B over long distances,
Like
which I'd never done.
Like taking the long walk. Familiar with that?
Yeah. I mean, we're talking miles and miles. I don't know how long the movements were. I want to say probably at least 10 kilometers between the points. And but what was cool was that what was new to me too is that I was by myself, right? Like in the dark, in the mountains, or well, to me they were mountains, but like the hills and the woods, and it plays on your mind. Like it was new to me, and I was like, man, I've never been alone in the woods in the dark. Like
I can relate to that feeling very well.
Yeah, and it can be pretty intimidating.
Oh yeah.
But I believe, and they don't tell you, but I believe I found all my points. I think I made it. Pretty sure I passed all my ruck run times, but there were scenarios that I was woefully unprepared for, I think. And either way, I think I did pretty well. But at the end of it all, I'm pretty sure I was like one of the only infantry dudes that wasn't recon in the whole selection.
Really?
Yeah, out of most everybody there. And so at the end of it, they were like, hey, man, what's your MOS? And I was like, oh, I'm an 0313 LAV crewman. And well, actually, they were like, what's that? What's an 0313? And I was like, it's a LAV crewman. And they were like, we're not really looking for LAV crewman right now, man. Go to recon and come back. And I was like, wish you would have told me that a while ago.
They wouldn't, yeah.
Yeah. So that hurt pretty hard,
I bet.
It hurt pretty bad.
To pass selection and then just get rejected for the MOS.
Well, and I'm sure I made mistakes. Like I said, I was still really young and probably not qualified at that time to be selected to be special operations in my, looking back.
Sure.
But it was definitely for the best because I went back to LAR and they needed a vehicle commander to be the navigation vehicle commander. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I just went through a really good navigation course.
Yeah.
And so I deployed with them again. Well, I went to 2nd LAR, right, on the East Coast, which is new. And I was pretty bummed out, right? Obviously wanting to go to recon and then not making it through MARSOC. So I was bummed out, but there was a platoon commander, this captain, Captain Wynn, I believe is his name. Man. Yeah. And so he came to me and was like, hey man, like you're a good dude. I'm looking for a vehicle commander. Would you be willing to go on this MEU and be my vehicle commander? Never done a MEU, be my first billet as a vehicle commander. And I was like, absolutely, if you'll help me get to recon. And he was like, I'll do that. Absolutely. And it was, it worked out great. We did the MEU, went to places like Greece and Egypt. I think we went to Egypt.
Wow.
Some pretty cool countries, just med float, But,
what are you doing when you get to those countries? Is it just a libo break when you get there? Are you actually training and operating in the country with their forces?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we trained, and it was awesome. We trained with the Greek Marines, I believe it was Volos, Greece or something like that. Supposedly it's where Jason and the Argonauts left from. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
But having never been to Greece before, it was pretty cool. At the time, I think the economy was kind of hurting, but being out in the countryside in the hills of Greece, like back where the Spartans were, like, yeah, I thought it was super cool. But yeah, some pretty hardcore training with the Greek forces. I remember in Egypt we did I think it's called Bright Star, but it's like a huge bilateral exercise. we hit the beach with the vehicles, and almost immediately got stuck, which turned into a nightmare. But
Now, are these wheeled or tracked?
LEVs are wheeled.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're actually 8-wheeled, 8-wheel drive. Like pretty impressive vehicles. They can go almost anywhere. They're
Kind of reminds me of an Argo.
Yeah.
You seen an Argo?
Yeah,
It's like a
exactly.
boat motor on the back on a boat with,
Yeah.
and you can put tracks on the wheels, but
Yeah. The problem with LEVs though is you got to ballast them out. You got to they can sink. So basically the weight of the engine in the front right corner, you had to put it. I can't remember exact weight, but a bunch of weight in the back left corner to balance them, or else they just right to the bottom.
Nosedive.
And they can't take waves or anything like that. But still pretty impressive vehicles. And they can go fast. They can go fast for their size and weight, and so you can get, a team, 3-man crew. You can get 7 dudes, 6, 7 guys, where you need them to get pretty fast. So a lot of fun.
So you got to do a Mew and go to some cool places.
Right.
Did he hold up his end?
He did. Yeah. So we got back from that Mew, essentially got off the ship, and I think it was maybe a week after we got back, they called us back to the ship for Haiti. So Haiti got hit with Haiti. And I think I had my recon package in at the time, but Haiti got hit with the earthquake. We immediately got recalled and we went to Haiti. Also a unique experience. So we saw, that's where I saw some pretty crazy stuff, man. There was a lot of people hurt, starving. But the Marines got to do a lot of good there.
Was that from the storm?
It was a massive earthquake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, earthquake, right.
Yeah, massive earthquake. And a lot of their construction was cinder blocks and brick too. And so all those buildings just came down on people. And it was wild. But while I was there, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that seemed like more of like a humanitarian kind of mission.
It was, yeah. Full on humanitarian. We were just there to help people. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll never forget, like we were driving through the jungle, like just literally knocking over trees, and then all of a sudden there was a refugee camp, in the middle of this jungle. We had no idea it was there, and the people were extremely happy to see us, and we brought them MREs, and we had to go back and get them, but we came back with MREs, and it was cool. It was difficult to manage distribution just because everybody was so hungry.
They're just happy to be constipated.
Yeah, no, it was definitely interesting. But definitely a unique experience, and I'll never forget the mayor of the town gave me like a hand-carved sculpture of a Haitian woman as like a thank you, because we got food to them, and I still have it, but it's really cool. It's like soapstone, and he hand-carved it, and it put his name on the back, and he told me that if I ever come back, he's got a house that like this house is yours. You can have this house. Like it'll be here when you come back. And I was like, all right, man.
That's a cool connection.
Yeah, appreciate that. Really cool. And
put it on VRBO.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and Haiti's so beautiful, man. We were when we got back to shore, we were like snorkeling for lobsters and boiling them in ammo cans and stuff, which is probably super unhealthy.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. But some good lobster, so it was cool. But shortly after that was when I found out, basically on my way home, we stopped in Guantanamo Bay, which was cool. Got to do some spear fishing. But that's when I found out my package was approved to recon, and I was like, I was super pumped, man. So,
what was the recon in doc like compared to having gone through MARSOC? Did you feel prepared? You're like, I got this, or did you still feel that butterflies? Like, oof?
Yeah, I felt once again not really knowing much about it. So fortunately, on those Mews, there was a recon platoon.
Oh, okay.
And I was like the biggest fan. I was always there. And this is a funny story. I knew I was making the right decision going to recon, because I was one of the most senior sergeants at that time. It was Weapons Company 3-2 on the Mew, and I was a senior sergeant in the berthing on the ship, which is like where all the Marines live. And the first sergeant was coming through. He's inspecting everything, and he's like yelling at me. He's like, "Why is there dust here? What's going on?" And then we get to this dark hallway with one of these blocking the, a poncho liner hanging up, and all the lights are off. And the first sergeant like rips it open. He's like, "Who's in here? Who is this?" And you just hear a voice out of the dark, like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "I'm First Sergeant so and so." And he's like, "Well, this is recon. Get the hell out," And he was like, "Oh, Roger that." And, and then he goes right back to yelling at me. And I was like, "Man, I'm in the wrong line of work, dude."
Yeah.
So that kind of solidified my plans there. But so anyway, but I felt. So I knew a little bit about it. I knew it was obviously amphibious reconnaissance, so I knew there'd be a lot of swimming. And so being in Haiti and like going to Guantanamo Bay and stuff, like I did a lot of swimming, like in the open ocean.
Yeah.
Just not a pool. There's no pools, so I just swim as much as I could. And obviously work out on the gym. There's not a lot to do on ships besides work out. So next thing I know, I'm in BRC. And
how long is that school?
3 months at the time. Yeah. I think it's a lot longer now because now they have like a pre-BRC, from what I understand. And that's where they do a lot of weeding out. That's where it's very difficult. And then once they get through that, that's where they start teaching them in the actual course.
Yeah. They try to break you off first and see
Right.
where your quit button's at.
Right.
If you have one. And if you prove you don't, then they teach you.
Yep. But so I showed up to the actual course day one, and I barely made it.
Really?
Barely made it, yeah. So my PFT was solid, I crushed that. But then we went to the pool, and it was what got me was 25-meter underwater crossover. I had never done one, never done one in my life. And I remember the first time. Yeah, I remember the first time looking at it, I was like, "That's pretty far, man, to swim underwater. I don't know that I could do that." And so I just told myself, "You're gonna do it, or pass out trying."
Did you see any shallow water blackouts?
Yeah.
Did you have one?
No, actually I didn't. Somehow I didn't. But the first attempt I failed.
Yeah.
My first attempt at it.
Did they coach you at all about over oxygenate yourself, like get that carbon dioxide and you can just relax and cruise through it?
No,
just like do it.
No, not for me. And I think some of the other guys did get some pre-training, but for some reason, whatever route that I took probably wasn't the preferred route. So it was just literally sink or swim. And my first attempt, my foot broke the surface. And so that's a fail.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, they're like,
and you don't know, or did you finish it and they're like, that didn't count.
I did the whole thing underwater. I did the whole thing underwater, and I'm like, yes, I made it. I did it, and like, I can hear my heartbeat in my ears and everything, but I made it. And I come up, and the guy's like, go back and do it again. Your foot broke the surface. And I was like, wait, nobody told me. I just thought you had to be underwater, your head had to be underwater.
Right. Just show you can hold your breath.
Yeah. And so I'm walking back. It's real slow, kind of feeling real bad for myself. And one of the instructors, and I wish I knew his name, but he pulled me to the side and was like, "Hey man, next time you do it," he's like, "go as deep as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Go as deep as you can." And then and in my mind, I was like, "Man, that's kind of
sounds counterintuitive."
Yeah. Like I was like, that doesn't sound right, but I did it, and I made it, and the rest is history. The rest of it, the treading water and the bottom samples, swimming down and touching the bottom as many times as they tell you and all that, I didn't really have any issues with. No problems.
You're a pretty tall guy. You got some Michael Phelps in you.
Yeah, and I'm super positive buoyant. So like,
oh, that's good.
So I just float.
Nice.
Even I don't even have to swim to stay up, so it wasn't a problem. The ruck running. Yeah, so fortunately I'd had that experience at the selection, so I had a decent idea. But the Alpha Shelf at Pendleton, man, it's it'll destroy you. So that was interesting. I did pretty good, I think. Amphib phase, Coronado. That chewed me up pretty good. Because as you can see, I'm skinny. I'm just a skinny guy. So that cold water and it was pretty miserable for me. But did all right. Came back. Graduated BRC. Went back to second. And I started out in Alpha Company. Tried out for Recon Team Leaders course. And I did pretty well for that. And unfortunately, they had a guy get hurt pretty bad in Force Company. He got injured pretty good, and the platoon that was about to deploy needed a point man for the team. And so having combat experience with LAR and being pretty good at navigation, they asked like, hey, would you be interested in going and filling in on this team short notice? And I said, absolutely, I'll do that. So I fell in. I became a point man for the team. It was the free fall team, which was pretty sweet because I got to go, sear school, jump school, and then right into free fall, which is pretty rare. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And that's also where I started experiencing canines, right? So as a recon Marine, we'd get not patrol dog, but like tracking bite dogs, apprehension dogs attached to us. We'd get explosives canines attached to us, and pretty impressive to see those guys work. And that's where I started to kind of take an interest in them.
Just the presence of a dog raises the morale on the team.
Yeah, 100%. That deployment, we didn't have them on the ship with us. I just remembered being around them from time to time on Muse and stuff, like going around. The next deployment, we actually had 2 dogs. We had a bomb dog and a bite dog on the ship with us the whole deployment. And that their handler is actually still in, and he's a good friend of mine. And it's kind of, speaking of small worlds, he actually trained, he was one of the NCOs and trainers of the guy that trained me as a DPS handler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so,
that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Real small world.
Is our friend that we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Talking about Ray?
Yeah. Well, so the canine stuff though, I still like that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do primarily. Still, like it's definitely something I was always impressed with, and I love dogs and everything. But on that deployment, I was the JTAC. I was the Joint Terminal Attack Controller for that deployment, and
controlling the airspace.
Yeah, we did a lot of VBSS stuff and a lot of so I was like the guy next to platoon commander, talking to aircrafts, kind of managing all that.
Yeah.
But so we got back from that deployment. And just kind of needed a break, back to back. I think I'd done 3 Muse at that point in time. If you don't include Haiti, that'd be the 4th. But
wow.
And what's funny is it was all on the same ship. The USS
my old
Baton.
room.
Yeah, LHD-5, the USS Baton. I've spent a lot of time on that ship.
I bet.
And it's actually where I met my wife. No kidding. So she was actually on that ship as well, and we met in Dubai. So yeah. They have that beer on the pier,
I don't.
Never
I never got
to
do a Muse.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
it's just back and forth to the sandbox.
Consider yourself lucky, Muse.
I don't know, man. I feel like you guys got to actually see the world. Like that was the pitch. Join the Marine Corps, see the world. There's women in Australia that throw their numbers at you. Right?
Oh yeah,
I just went to Iraq, and you can't even see their faces or talk to them.
Right. Yeah.
So it was pretty shitty.
Yeah, the cool thing about the Muse is it definitely it teaches you a lot about the Marine Corps, right? It's like you get to experience like all the logistics, how the air wing works, like the ins and outs of the air wing, and not only that, but just how the big Navy works, and it takes us back to our roots as Marines, So I thought that was really neat. But I'll never forget the first time I met my wife on that ship was. We were in the berthing, and I'm in like silkies, like super short shorts, right? And we're all playing spades and
not doing jumping jacks.
No, just hanging out, man. just playing spades and silkies, and I'm listening to Texas country music, some Red Dirt, and man, this beautiful blonde. She's like, hey, she's like, where are you from? And I'm like, Texas. Where are you from? And you don't see that on ships a lot, right? So I'm just like, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Oklahoma, hey, would I be able to get some of that music? I've never heard that song. And I was like, sure. Right. Like, and so anyway, that's the first time. And I didn't see her again. I did cause the ships are huge, thousands and thousands of people. But I didn't see her again until we were in Dubai at the port. And I was walking back with like a case of beer to my buddies, and I saw her, and I just like went up and like kicked her. I'd been drinking, right? So I'm just like, hey, what's up? You remember me? I'm the guy with the Red Dirt music. And she was just like, like, get away from me, But, I went over to the table. I'm passing out beers to the guys, and she comes up and like punches me in the arm, and she's like, "Hey, let's sit down and grab a beer." And I was like, "Sounds good. Let's do that." And so we got back to the States, and she was stationed in Virginia. I'm in North Carolina, and we just started driving back and forth, visiting each other, spending the weekends together. And I went to sniper school. And completely got destroyed in that course. You know how it is, man.
Oh, yeah.
I was smoked.
I was 140 pounds at 6'1"
Yeah.
when I graduated sniper school.
Yeah, I'd almost say it was more difficult than BRC, man, for me. Honestly.
I've heard that from many recon Marines.
Yeah, for me personally, it was. And every Friday was a celebration just to still be
there. To still be
in school. Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah. It was one day at a time. My buddy's like, well, let's just see what we can do today.
For sure.
We're here until we're not, right?
So she'd come down on the weekends when I was in that course and like just take care of me, you know, because like
awesome.
I'd just like lay on the couch. Like,
oh yeah.
So she'd like, you know, just cook food and help me with laundry and just, you know, take care of me. And I was like, man, this girl's pretty awesome. And so, you know, I went to I got a seat to static line jump master school, right? So like very difficult and hard to get into. And so I'm getting ready to go to that school. I've got everything ready. And me and my platoon commander were going at the time. And she was there. She was staying the weekend with me. And I think I was flying out that Sunday maybe. And so it's like 3 a.m. I got to go make my flight. We're carrying all this gear. And she like grabs this big bag and she's carrying it down. And I was like, hey, and we lived in a beach house at the time in Emerald Isle, real steep beach house stairs, right? And it just rained. Well, she slips, falls down the steps, carrying my gear, and like destroys her leg. Her leg's just snapped, right?
Wow.
And I'm like, oh man. So I get her in the truck and I'm going to the ER, you know, I'm getting her to the hospital. Well, I call my platoon commander and I'm like, hey sir, I don't think I'm going to make it to the airport to go to the school. My girlfriend just fell down and broke her leg. And he, you know, static line jump master is tough and nobody really is ever prepared. And he was like, man, I should have pushed my wife down the stairs, you know? But he's like, no, man, he's like, take care of your wife, you know, take care of your girlfriend. They all knew her, you know, at the time, because we're a pretty tight group. But they knew her at the time. But she was like, no, I'll drive myself to the hospital. You're going to the airport. You're not going to miss a school because of me. Like, and I was like, all right, I'm going to marry this woman, man.
Yeah,
like that's when I knew. Yeah, that's when I knew. So
when she's just as in line with your mission and supporting you as you are, like that's the partner you don't want to lose.
No, 100%.
And
she is to this day. She's the only reason I'm able to do the things I'm able to do.
That's awesome.
Very independent, highly intelligent, you know, supportive. So yeah. So anyway, we got married shortly after that. And I took orders to be a SEER instructor on the West Coast. I'm tired of doing MUs, you know.
What year did you do that?
2010.
You know Dan?
No, I'm sorry, 2015.
Do you know a Laskowski?
I don't.
Okay.
Maybe. It sounds kind of familiar.
He did that around 2008. I don't know how long he was there for.
No,
but
I wouldn't know him.
Okay.
No, the Marines usually rotate out every 3 to 4 years.
Oh, okay. He might have just been right at the gap. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got tired of doing MUs and going on ships and stuff and kind of needed a break. They sent me to Sierra West and so my wife and I moved out there. That was one of the best jobs. I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, teaching survival, primitive survival. I got into it, man. Starting fire out of sticks and all that. I loved it. And the teaching the evasion part and like counter tracking more so, but like that comes in to what I do now. Like that kind of helped form me for what I do now. Yeah. But so I had my first daughter there too. And when I had my first daughter, I started thinking about the future. Obviously, it kind of does that for you, right?
It does. Suddenly your life is more meaningful when someone else depends on it. Yeah,
for sure. So I had my first daughter and then so I started looking into what's next after SEER school. And it was Okinawa. And I was like, 3rd Recon, Okinawa, 31st MU. And I was like, nah, man.
How many years had you been in at this point?
At that point, I'd been in 13 active duty years.
Wow, and you walked away from 13 years.
Well, not entirely.
Okay.
So I started looking at other options. I was like, man, I really don't want to go to Japan and get deployed on a MU and leave my family. What are my options? Well, I never even knew the reserves really existed, especially recon reserves.
Mhm.
And I remember as an instructor, I had a student who was from Texas, and or a reserve recon unit, and I was like, man, like, wait, you get to do recon stuff and you're a civilian? Like, he had a good job. I don't remember what it was, but he had a good career.
Mm-hmm.
Smart guy, real smart, very mature. And I was like, man, are all the reserve recon Marines like this guy? Solid dude. And so I started asking questions, and he was like, yeah, we got a unit in Texas, and I remembered that. So whenever I was EAS and I put in, or I looked into it and got orders to 4th Recon in San Antonio. And so I started looking for a civilian job, and my parents are cops. They're both cops. My mom,
Wow.
yeah, my mom's been a cop a long time, and my stepdad, he was actually Austin PD. So I started asking them, like, I never wanted to do law enforcement because I was raised by cops,
I felt the same way. My dad
Yeah.
was a cop and then a judge.
Where at?
Williamson County.
No way.
Steve Benton.
Yeah, okay.
That's
I know
my
that
dad.
name. Yeah, that's wild, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. But so my mom and dad being cops, I started asking them like I really don't know what to do, and I get out, and they were like, well, don't be Austin PD. Like, they didn't recommend it,
Yeah.
Great. I mean, I love Austin PD, but just they knew me and they knew it wouldn't fit with my
Yeah.
my
You don't want that city council on your back.
yeah, pretty much. So they got me to they sent me with a ride along with DPS with a trooper, and immediately fell in love with it. Like, because I'd ridden out with my dad before in APD, and I was like, yeah, this is cool, but I just don't know. Well, when I rode out with the trooper, I immediately was like, wait, man, like, you have your own car, you check on from home, and you just go to work, like, you just go do your job. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, like, who's telling you what to do and when to do it and where to do it? He was like, rarely ever, like, not very often.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I could definitely do that. And that's what I did. I applied to DPS while on active duty still, knowing that I was going to go 4th Recon. And I just timed it perfectly where I EAS'd off active duty. The application process was kind of iffy, right? Like you said, you're walking away from 13 years.
Yeah.
It was pretty scary for me, very intimidating, not knowing what's next, because I'd only ever been a Marine my entire adult life. So
How did you manage that stress and that decision? Because I think we all deal with it. When you have that family, you have that little girl, and you're looking at them, and you're like, okay, my priorities have changed now, but I still have all of this experience and this career that. How did you do that?
yeah, well, my parents, 100%. Yeah,
Okay.
my mom, they, being local law enforcement, they kind of helped me out. They were like, hey, talk to this guy, because when you're going through the application process, you don't know how you're doing really, So the polygraph, I thought I failed it. The psych eval,
We all do.
Yeah, the psych eval was pretty brutal. A lot of questions about combat, post-traumatic
Really?
stress. Yeah, they just want to make sure, and
So it was a full scope.
yeah. The math test, barely passed that. I think I passed by 1 point, maxed out the time limit.
We're Marines. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't done math since
I bet you
sniper school.
colored well, though. I'm
Right,
glad you
yeah,
passed that
Yeah,
one.
I was snacking on crayons while I'm doing the test, but I barely passed the math test. So I was very concerned about whether I got the job or not, and I had looked at other jobs, but not as hard as I probably should have been for as close to the EAS was coming, so I was very stressed.
Yeah.
EAS comes, I planned it to where the recruit school that I applied for gave me a month of vacation. So I EAS, started transitioning to the reserves, and we went on vacation. And over that month of vacation is when I got word I'd been hired, and that was a huge weight off my back. So yeah, that month goes by, and I start training for the academy, getting ready, and doing the best I can to just be in shape and everything, and start kind of studying for what they're looking for, because you got to know just a lot of general knowledge about Texas, regions, like kind of where I wanted to work, because that's another unknown. A big unknown is like
where they're going to send you.
Where they're going to send you, right? And I fully expected the border, but fortunately went through the academy and I got stationed here in Austin. So for my first duty station.
And tell me about your FTO. I hear that guy was an asshole.
Yeah, well, no. So Ray, he also a Marine, right? And so my first FTO was a Navy guy, but we did not get along at all.
Yeah.
No, we did not get along at all. It was not a good relationship. Because I'm very much like I'm like, all right, where's the criminals at? I want to catch criminals, and he was not that way. He was very much like,
that autonomy is a double-edged sword.
Right.
You can be as proactive as you want to be,
right,
or you can sit under a bridge,
right,
and watch traffic go by and collect a paycheck.
Yeah, and I mean, and fortunately, that's the good thing about DPS is they kind of let you produce and what you're good at, right?
Yeah.
So some guys are really good at traffic enforcement and crashes, and like that's what they want to do. I wanted to catch bad guys. That was my main thing. So
that's how Ray is too.
Exactly. So once we got paired up,
yeah, I've known Ray since we were 14.
Yeah,
we joined the Marine Corps. We went to boot camp together, and he's been one of my best friends ever since.
Yeah,
I love that guy.
Which is crazy that you know him like that. But yeah,
crazy that we have so much overlap.
Yeah, man,
I've never met you.
Right. Yeah.
At least that I know of.
Well, you know that they say the few, the proud, man.
I guess so.
Marines. And that carries over to troopers too. Like there's not a lot of us. So you meet a trooper that was a Marine, we just automatically click, but we speak the language. And that's how Ray was, right? Mm-hmm. So like when Ray got me, he was like, if there was a crash or something like we had to respond to, I'd already been in a crash as a trooper, like on FTO. Like I think my first week on, and I was very like skittish, right?
Oh, like you wrecked a vehicle?
I was in the passenger seat. My FTO actually wrecked it at the time, the one I didn't get along with. But it wasn't necessarily his fault. It was there was a pursuit going on. We were trying to get in front of him to spike him and all this, and he went off the road pretty fast.
It happens.
Yeah, happens for sure. But because of that, I was real apprehensive to go fast or whatever. And Ray was the one that trained me to pursuit drive, and like he was like, "Hey, I want you to get from point A to point B. Like this is an emergency. Treat it as such."
Yeah.
And so he's the one that kind of got me out of that fear.
He did the best threshold break I have ever seen or experienced in my life on a ride out with him. We were chasing a vehicle. There was probably 8 troopers, and I'm rolling with him that night, right? And it's just 2 buddies out chasing people, but I'm not a cop. I'm doing a ride out. And this woman got drunk at Mavericks and decided she was going to, I guess, do 100 down the highway and then not stop for anybody. And we followed her for probably 10, 15 minutes, just all over. She's going around neighborhoods and off-road and everything. And she's going through neighborhoods, blowing through all these stop signs. And I guess... I think it was another cop car in front of us, and we come up over a hill and we feel the wheels come off the ground, and we come back down, and there's another trooper that I guess stopped at a stop sign, and we come down and he hits that brake and just straight from like 80 miles an hour to 0 right before we touch bumpers, and then that car moves. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Bro, that was amazing. Good job.
Yeah. The emergency vehicle operations course that we get is it's very impressive, and they really do teach you how to drive. I mean,
I knew like I've done 3 driving courses as a contractor for the agency I was working for, and so all of the things I was just excited. Like I knew what we were doing, and the fact that was a threshold break and how he pumped that and rode it all the way in, I was like, man, that's the most impressive driving I've ever seen in my life, bro.
Yeah, I'd gotten to go through T1G's
nice.
driving course or whatever in West Memphis.
Okay.
And it was cool because I saw a lot of that. And what was cool was the instructors for that were troopers from like the southeast area. But a lot of that carried over to when I went to the academy.
Yeah.
So yeah, the academy, they teach us a lot of pursuit driving, and there's these dumb cones. I hated the cones, but but looking back, it's very beneficial.
For sure.
But yeah, so Ray FTO'd me, got me out of that fear of pursuit driving and emergency, getting to emergencies. And man, we caught a lot of bad guys too. A lot of bad guys, or criminals for that matter, So phenomenal guy, phenomenal FTO. So yeah, I did my time here in Austin. I did 3 years on patrol for Travis County, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And that's actually where my first couple of law enforcement canine interactions occurred. The first one was a pursuit somewhere around North Austin area. It was a pursuit where the guy bails out. I think it was maybe two suspects bailed out, but anyway, we couldn't find them, and we had looked for like 2 hours. We held a perimeter. It was APD's scene, so I was just there kind of helping on perimeter, and I'll never forget, but their canine showed up, and it had been 2 hours since these guys bailed out, and we were about to leave. We were all about to break down and like, guess they got away.
Yeah.
This canine found them, dude. And I have no idea how. Like, we had searched everywhere, and this canine tracked these guys from the vehicle to where they were hiding in like one of those big boxes you keep like lawn stuff in or whatever, or like you put on a porch. They were like inside of that, and they found them. I was like, man, that's insane.
Yeah. Those dogs are cool.
The second event and this is really where I was like, man, dogs are cool, was during the freeze. This was during the freeze, and it was complete chaos in Austin. Like, as a trooper, I'd like crash after crash after crash, and like I was just giving people rides home because I had a all-wheel drive Explorer. So like all the troopers that had like 2-wheel drive Tahoes or a Charger or a Crown Vic, they couldn't even like leave their driveways.
Wow.
Yeah, and so all the guys with Explorers that were all-wheel drive were really the ones on the road. And I'd come across crashes, and like people were just stranded and out there in that weather, and I was just like, hey, we got to leave your car here. I'll give you a ride, and I'd fit as many people as I could and just give them rides home. But we got a call that there was I don't want to go into too many details. It's pretty hardcore, but it sort of turned into like a hostage deal where this guy took a lady at knife point, like into the wood, and like drug her into the woods. And I was pretty close, and obviously I couldn't go very fast because of the all-wheel drive, because of the ice, but I still had the all-wheel drive. So I got there. I was probably second or third, maybe fourth officer on scene. And there was a deputy there who was another LAR Marine. And like I said, Marines just click. And so we had been friends for a while in the county. And he had visually tracked this guy into through the ice and snow into the woods. And we found the lady. We found the woman where the guy had just thrown her into a creek, right? So she was soaking wet.
Was she alive?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wow.
So fortunately. But we were worried about hypothermia and stuff, so we got her out of there. We found out that the guy kept running. He ran off into the woods. Well, they brought the dog in, man. And
that's the fun thing about snow too, right? Like, did you just see the footprints, or did you need the dog?
We needed the dog because wherever there was like hard ice, you obviously there was no prints.
Yeah.
And tracking over, there was parts of like hard packed ground. You just couldn't see any tracks at all.
Okay.
But that's where the dog came in, man. And we tracked this dude through the woods, through a homeless camp area kind of thing. We cleared that out. Like, that was kind of weird because, you never know what you're going to find in the woods out here,
For sure.
in Austin.
I'm impressed that he went through a homeless camp and maintained that scent on the other side. Yeah,
and we can go into that, but their olfactory system, the canine olfactory system, it's still, man, I've got some stories, but it's incredible. It's incredible. And I don't think science fully understands it.
Yeah.
Like, there's theories and all this stuff, but I don't think we fully understand how that system works. But yeah, we found the guy in the shed, and the canine handler gave him warnings and everything, and he wouldn't come out. He, potentially had a weapon or whatever.
Yeah.
And, he got bit. And
what breed of dog?
I believe that was a German Shepherd.
Ouch.
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, yeah. So, dog goes in, grabs the guy. We pull him out. It's the suspect, it's the guy we were looking for. And, put a tourniquet on his arm just to make sure, because, it was a high up on the arm. But that's whenever I was like, man, canine's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That's a partner to have, huh?
Yeah. And then shortly after that, got transferred down to Corpus area. That's where my wife got into Texas A&M Corpus.
Okay.
She wanted to, so she's still currently going, she's about to graduate in about a year, but she wants to be a licensed family and child therapist. So, which is interesting. My mom just graduated with her master's to do that stuff. So, so my mom's also a counselor, and she works a lot with veterans and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so my wife going to school, she's a child advocate, and I'd been injured pretty bad training for DPS, and in the Marine Corps. But so I had my second surgery, and I had to get my spine fused.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so pretty dark place for me, right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't think I was going to be able to do anything cool like recon stuff or, SWAT, or anything like that. And I really wanted to do SWAT, but because of that injury, and I thought about going back out for that, but my wife was basically like, dude, like, when are you going to be satisfied, man? Like I want you to be able to hold our grandkids someday. And so I went back to the road to patrol like the Corpus area. And it wasn't the same. It wasn't like Austin. It's more so like highway interdiction, looking for smugglers, right? Like narcotics and human smuggling, things like that. And, that wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, right? Like I like to run and just go. And well, when they'd send us further south, I'd really, like, not being from South Texas, I didn't know anything about it. Here in Austin, we'd have people bail out and run, but, we'd usually catch them, no problem, air support or a K9. And I didn't think anything of it. Well, I get down there and I'm in the middle of nowhere, on these highways, these back roads, and I try to stop a car and, people just bailing out, running everywhere and like just into the brush. And it was all new to me. When I went down there, they're like, all right.
No, your blinker's out. Like, where are you going?
Yeah, I was gonna give you a warning. As they're running off, and like sometimes they're in camouflage. So I'm like,
oh shit.
Like I'm like freaking out as a Marine too. Yeah. I'm like, what is going on here? Because nobody prepared me. They were just like, hey, Operation Lone Star, just go and, stop cars, look for human smuggling. But it didn't click for me what that meant until it happened to me. And then I was like, oh, this is what they're doing. And you never know who they are. You have no idea,
What are they doing?
Essentially, they are entering the country and bypassing the checkpoints without any identification.
On foot? In vehicles?
Yeah, we'll get to that. There's a lot of different ways they try to do it.
Yeah. I've seen like the pictures of like an X-ray of an 18-wheeler, and it's just full of people standing inside. It's cool that they can do it through metal. Like I didn't think an X-ray would work through metal, but those tankers are solid steel, and they're still finding people through it.
Yeah,
like,
so the Border Patrol does an amazing job. They're at the checkpoints and the points of entry. They do an amazing job with what they have to try to protect the United States. Not only from humans, but radiological stuff, all that stuff. Narcotics, and this. I think they just found like a bunch of spider monkeys being smuggled. Into the spider monkeys, like an endangered
like Talladega
species.
Nights.
Yeah, man. Like I'm coming at you like a spider monkey. Like they have a picture of it. They like opened a backpack.
What the hell do you do with a spider monkey? I guess it's just exotic, right?
I guess they're sell them. Endangered, maybe. So they're highly sought after. It's a black market. People, black market stuff too. So that's what they do. The agents there at the points of entry and the checkpoints. And so what we get as troopers is. In my case, it's a lot of times going to be stolen vehicles from our major cities that are being operated by like professional smugglers. And so those guys are stealing your King Ranch F-250, your high-end Chevy high country trucks, right? 4-wheel drives. And they'll come from the major cities and they'll pick up individuals that have bypassed the checkpoints, points of entries, all that. And so we have no idea. Walking, yeah, miles and miles and miles. I think in a lot of cases it's anywhere like 50 miles, maybe 100 degrees.
How many dehydrated dead bodies do you find?
Hundreds.
Wow.
Hundreds. Yeah, every year I'd say it's several hundred, and that's just in a small area of South Texas. Across the border, the numbers.
People just walk till they can't anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Sad.
But because of all these things, like as a road trooper, I'd have these bailouts, right? Or even not necessarily just a bunch of people, even just the driver. Like one dude would just bail out and run and just get away. He'd just get away with it.
What do you do then?
Well, I'd get in trouble for it all the time, but I would chase him.
Just pick the slowest one and chase that one.
Well, if it was just the driver, like, I'd go after him. You know what I mean? And it didn't matter who it was. I'm going after you. You just can't run from the police. You just can't. You know what I mean? Like that's when our red and blues come on. Go ahead and stop and let us.
It's like tag, man. It's the challenge accepted. Let's go.
Yeah, and so I found it completely absurd. All of it. I was like, because there for a while it was kind of like, hey, when they bail out and run, like stay on the highway. It's too dangerous. And I was like, man,
you're by yourself, right?
Yeah, for the most part. But
that is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, as long as I had radio communications or like my phone, because the minute it would happen, I'd be like, hey, bail out, and they can, the units would come to my location.
Okay.
But you're right. I had to let a lot of people go because I was like, man, I'm too far from the road. I'm by myself. I can't see anything. It's too thick, the brush. I was like, I should probably stop, and I did. But then I had a foot pursuit that lasted I'd say we ran about 3 miles, me and another trooper. And I don't think she was like, because I was just like, hey, come on over here. We got to get this guy, on the radio. Well, she shows up in the race, and so I could see him with binoculars. So long story short, this guy had ran from the deputies, crashed. He tried to bust through a fence, but he hit some railroad tracks. He bails out, jumps the fence, and I didn't know this at the time, but he had broken his arm when he jumped the fence. So anyway, he was like trying to crawl very carefully way out there in this ranch, and so I'm up there with binoculars, and I see him. Like I see him crawling, and so I call this trooper, and I'm like, "Hey, we got to go get this guy. I can see him. That's the driver." And so she shows up, and we try to sneak up as close as we can while he sees us, and the race is on.
Yeah,
like, we chase this guy for miles, and in full kit. That's pretty.
That sucks.
Well, we ended up losing him in what we call like a mott, you know what I mean, or thick brush. We lose him in some thick brush, and I'm like, man, you chase this guy so far, I don't want to let him go.
Yeah.
Well,
committed.
I committed, right? Well, game warden shows up with a dog.
Nah.
And all I hear on the radio is like, all right, dog's tracking, or they get the dog down. All right, dog's tracking, we're looking good. Oh, we got a runner. And the guy comes out the other side, and me and the game wardens just close in and catch him. And he ended up being a gang member, lots of felony arrests, just,
He knew where he was going.
He knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. But that was the first time I saw tracking dog out in that environment. And so one of our narcotics canine handlers, who's actually my sergeant now, he promoted, now he's my sergeant, but he was like, hey man, DPS is going to start a new program, canine tracking. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I was like, I had to think about it because with my injury and everything, I was like, man, can I do that? I was like, I want to do it because I'm tired of people getting away, committing crimes and just getting away.
Yeah, that's a tool to have in the toolbox there.
Huge tool, yeah. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to try out for it. And the selection was a 50-pound sandbag run for, I think, a half mile. And then it was a time 1 mile run. So not too bad, and I actually did really well with the sandbag. I was worried about it, but
it's a pig egg.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. I had a little bit of experience with that. I think we were using like the brute force sandbag thing. Yeah. So, but I was able to just throw that thing up there and go, and uneven terrain, so we had a little bit of a hill, but I did pretty well.
Where's your fusion?
S1, L3 through S1. Okay. So the bottom.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I was pretty worried about it, but I did
better
well.
Than had that been cervical, you probably wouldn't have. Yeah, that would have hurt.
Up higher?
Yeah, running with your head down if it had been a cervical fusion.
Yeah.
It's usually where it is. Thoracic area of your spine doesn't usually get fused, but the top and the bottom is where people get them.
Yeah.
So it gave you some cushion.
Well, that's probably coming to the top just from the night vision, I've had some buddies from wearing night vision.
You get a herniated disc, man.
Yeah. So I try to take
You wear a counterweight?
Yeah.
Good.
Probably more than I should, but yeah, I try to balance them out because we're running 31s, so they're pretty. I mean, they're not too heavy, but yeah, I have to balance them out, or else you can
wear you out.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because I didn't know this, and we'll get to it, but I'm tracking for 10 hours, all night, sundown to sun up.
So did that? Well, I mean, we'll get to it, I guess, but did that end up becoming more or less your job? When people run, you get the call, and so now you're just primary trackers.
Yeah. So that was something I was really interested in. Was like, what are we going to be doing? And basically they were like, tracking. That's it. Your job is to find people running from a badge. That's it. And
catch bad guys.
Just catch bad guys. And I was like, wait, this is what I've always wanted.
Yeah.
And we're not just bad guys, but help find people that need to be found. Just find anybody that needs to be found, essentially. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. So went through the selection and the board, and I made it, and the rest is history, So I went through, we were talking about the Canine Ember, the firefighter dog that does like arson, can locate fire stuff. Well, we went through, so DPS never done this before. And we went to, I'd already had kind of an idea of what it entailed just from working with the game wardens in the area, like seeing them. There's not a lot of them, So those guys, there's so few game wardens, and their dogs do so many things that they're always doing something.
Yeah. So
DPS, we're like, man, what are we gonna do to learn this new skill set, this new, And so we went through Pacesetter Canine in Liberty Hill, and the guy that runs that, he was a Navy handler as well. But we had an instructor who was a Marine canine handler, and he was trained by the same handler that went on that ship with me. That was one of my good buddies. So very small world. And unfortunately, because, when DPS says make it happen, they make it happen. Like, it moves fast. So our tracking school was very short. It was only a couple weeks, maybe. I think I had 2.5 weeks of actual on-the-ground tracking. The rest was a lot of like obedience and, basic handler skills, which, I probably needed a lot more of because I got a Malinois named Furia. Yeah, so her name's Furia, and she is furious.
Nice.
So
they're pretty high energy.
Very high energy, which is cool. It's awesome because they kind of matched everybody up with their personalities. I
was gonna ask, like, how do y'all just sniff each other's butts? I
guess
likes
so.
What?
I don't know. I mean, we just clicked, man.
Yeah.
We just clicked, and we're only getting better. We're only getting better. Like, every day we work together. I learned something new about her. She learned something new about me. It's just such a awesome relationship, like between a handler and their dog. And that's something I didn't anticipate. You know what I mean? I didn't see that coming. I didn't realize that that relationship would build that way. But yeah, the 5 weeks was pretty short. Real basic tracks, not very far. And I didn't think much of it until I got operational, and then I went out there. And my first track, so some individuals ran across the road in front of I think he was a sergeant, a supervisor. So he was like, man, that's weird, and so he called it in, and Border Patrol responded, and they were like, yeah, that's a group of individuals bypassing the checkpoint. And so I pulled up, and I was like, hey, I think I'd just gotten there, like literally like my first couple days on the job with the dog. And I was like, where the department was like, hey, go ahead and start trying to track. And so I asked the agents, I was like, hey, could I help you guys out and put my dog down, just see how it goes? And they were like, yeah, why not? Help us out. So I put her down, and I had no idea what I was doing, man. She's tracking, all over the place, stepped on a rattlesnake. Like, fortunately,
she did, or you did?
She ran right over him. And apparently I did too. The agent behind me was like, snake, rattlesnakes. And there was like multiple along this track. There was like 4 of them, but we're all over the place.
They've got a bag full of rattlesnakes they're tossing behind them.
I guess. Well, so the long story short, I didn't know how to read her yet. I didn't really know how to read her and whether she was tracking or not. And so she was telling me what I needed to know. I just didn't know how to speak the language yet. But we ended up finding we ended up finding them. And it was actually some women, and the men just left them behind.
Yeah.
Like once they realized we were coming, they just left them. And so we found them, and I was like, man, it works. Like she found them. I couldn't believe it. But it's funny because, so our marker for the reward, like along the track, I messed up because I was like, yes, she's tracking. I got so excited. I was like, this is actually working. She's tracking. And I was like, yes. And she just stops and looks back. And she's like, where's my toy, Dad?
Oh.
And so I messed up, and I was like, oh, sorry.
Just
go back
kidding.
to work. Just kidding. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay you until you find somebody.
I do that with my kid all the time. Sorry, we're out of ice cream. I didn't mean to say that.
Yeah. And so the rest of in that particular instance, the rest of the individuals just got away, and so they're in the country. We don't know who they are. So it's kind of crazy. But from there, we just started training, and I found the game wardens and reached out to border patrols, search and rescue guys, and they used canines, and they just took me under their wing, man, and just started, because there's just not enough of us. There's not, and canine tracking in general is kind of a dying art. Like for what we do, that long distance, miles and miles and miles, like that's not something that a lot of people do unless you're South Africa hunting poachers, right? Or tracking poachers, or boar star, where you're along the rural Texas, Arizona, New Mexico borders, California maybe. Like that's where your canine tracking for what we do shines. You know what I mean? Like your big cities have tracking dogs and stuff too, but it's different, right? Like urban tracking and what we're doing is a lot different. And so fortunately, I was able to find guys that had done it a few times, and there's only a couple, and they really kind of schooled me up, took me under their wing, and we started doing really well.
How often are you at the border working? Because you live here, right?
No.
You live in Austin?
No.
Where are you living?
Corpus.
Okay, so you're still south. You're up here for some training.
Yeah, and so you hear Corpus, right? And you're like, wait, that's not the border.
That's the beach.
Yeah, that's the beach. Yeah. But believe it or not, the border is affecting miles and miles inland. Okay, so like San Antonio, Houston, Austin, everywhere's being affected. I mean, as a road trooper here in Austin, the big narcotic seizures I was involved in, several of them were illegal immigrants that were transporting large amounts of methamphetamines. And I remember thinking as a new trooper, I was like, how is that possible? Like how do we not know who these folks are? And they're here moving and selling substances that can kill people, right? So
I think the political term is undocumented prescription drugs.
I mean, I guess maybe there's prescriptions for it, but
I'm joking.
Like the
so
fentanyl.
What's the scene down there right now? Is the fentanyl the main focus? Is it meth?
Well, fentanyl is definitely the main narcotics folks are worried about.
Okay,
because it is so deadly. Meth is something that I personally and most officers like, which they just got a bunch of meth down there at the checkpoint just yesterday. Almost fairly regularly, they find hundreds and hundreds of kilos or pounds of these meth, cocaine. Those are the main ones. Fentanyl's there.
Are we imprisoning those people here, or are we sending them back?
Honestly, it just depends.
Back to work.
If a trooper gets in, the trooper is going to charge state. They're going to file on the state side.
Okay.
On the Fed side, I can't speak to that really. And,
okay.
I'd just rather not.
Sure.
The Border Patrol, they have to contact the feds and like. Hey,
that's an interesting part. Is there's different rules, right, for who catches them. Right. DPS, you've got your own set of rules directed by the governor.
Well, we go based on the law.
Okay.
Like we enforce state laws, and so like for example, human smuggling, right? Somebody does something that puts somebody's life in danger while they're smuggling them, like it's 100 degrees outside and you shove people into a trunk, that's going to upgrade your charge. That's going to be a felony too. Human smuggling, risk of, or smuggling a person's serious risk of bodily injury, right?
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of that stuff, man. I mean, people put in conditions they should not be in. And you've heard on the news the instances with the semi trucks where a lot of folks have died, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. So we just enforce the law, and we help out as much as we can too with anybody.
What's the chain of custody? If you guys catch them, are you turning them over to Border Patrol? Does Border Patrol take them from that point forward, even though you've filed charges? Is there a hierarchy there where you have no say?
Yes. So we will refer the individuals to Border Patrol and arrest the actual smuggler, right? So we'll refer them over, and so because this is all so new and crazy, and just the sheer amount and numbers, I believe at the higher level they're still trying to work things out. But yes, we will refer them over, and so because at that point they become witnesses to what occurred, the human smuggling and stuff, and especially a lot of the undocumented persons will tell you, like, man, these guys were pretty rough to us, because these smugglers just don't care.
How do you know the difference between the smuggler and the smuggled?
Well, for us, it's the driver. Yeah, for us, it's the driver. So, for example, a vehicle bails out, I'm going after it. If I see the driver, that's who I'm going after more than anybody.
Are these being smuggled complicit?
Yes and no. It just depends on who they are. Like I said, it's such a dynamic situation. And I've caught illegal immigrants that were wanted murderers. I've caught wanted kidnappers that were illegal from South American countries. I've caught deported felons. A lot of times I don't know, because once again I catch them and they go to Border Patrol. But a lot of times I just ask them, because like I said, I don't care. I don't care what agency you're with or what badge you wear. If somebody's running from you and you need help finding people, I will help you. So for my report, though, I just ask them, like, hey, is there anything significant about these guys that I helped you track and apprehend? And they'll just let me know, like, oh yeah, this guy was a deported felon, or this guy's been caught and deported, 3-4 times. And that's how many times they've caught them, sent them back, and they've come back. So I think the highest I've seen was a gentleman that had been deported 18 times.
What are we doing?
Yeah. Well, and that guy was also, he'd also done prison time for human smuggling of persons. And the reason I was even there was because he had threatened to, illegal migrants actually called 911 that he was guiding. Coyote, right?
Yeah.
He was guiding.
Yeah.
So they actually called 911. We responded, and fortunately, they found the migrants that had called 911, and they were like, "Hey, this guy's he's trying to kill us." And so what happens was, if individuals in the groups that are being guided start to get dehydrated or fall out, they'll, like, oh man, I need medical attention. They'll try to call 911. Well, what that means is the brush guide and the rest of the group might get apprehended, right? Because now they know that they're there. And so this guy was like trying to take their phone and get rid of them.
Surprised they even let them have one.
Yeah, surprisingly. And I have found individuals that were not going to survive much longer, where the guide did take their phone and just left them in horrible conditions. And fortunately, Border Patrol agents and troopers managed to find him and save his life. Now,
are these mostly adults or children?
Where I'm at, it's pretty hostile conditions for a child, and I think even the smugglers will recognize that. I have helped recover a young child in the brush, and I have seen a bailout where there were children in the vehicle, but they didn't run. Like the driver and the brush guide bailed out, but the actual migrants, they stayed with the vehicle. Yeah, and that was one of my first pretty good tracks too. That was the one with the child in the car, because I remember thinking, like, when I pulled up at that bailout and I saw the kids crying and stuff, I was like, I'm going to catch these guys.
Yeah,
I made it my mission, and I had a road trooper with me who was just a solid new trooper, but he was just solid. And I was like, hey man, I need a cover officer. Like, will you go? And he's in his full trooper uniform, got his hat on and everything. And he was like, I got you, let's go. And we took off and we tracked those guys for, I want to say, close to 6 miles. and we caught.
You ever do horseback?
Yeah, some counties will deploy pack depending on the severity of the crime, right? So like they'll deploy hounds and stuff and ride a horse, but not for what I do. Because I never know who I'm going to find and stuff. So like I need to stay very controlled and make sure my dog, you know what I mean? Because she's not bite trained, but
is she leashed?
Yeah, she's on a lead
the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, just dragging me around, dragging my old broken back around. Yeah,
it's a strong animal. That's a hell of a purpose, man.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. It really is great. And like I said, over the past year that I've started, just one, helping find people that should probably not be out there because they may or may not make it.
Sure.
But two, catching criminals, and it's been very rewarding. And I just like being able to help. Because I remember being that guy where like you try to stop and they just run and it's like, well, all right,
what do I do now?
What do I do now? But now they don't just get away, And
now I call it Jeremy.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Yeah,
that is cool.
And there is some other guys. There's maybe 2 or 3 of us in the area where I'm at that are there on a regular basis, and we're getting more. So smugglers beware. Like, you're probably not going to get away too easy from now on. Like, we're coming,
Yeah.
So
I mean, the program's working, right? Why keep it small? Scale
It's been very successful, and so much so that we've just recently selected more guys, and they're in training now, and should be good. So some pretty solid guys.
And that's what you're in Austin to do, right?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll come up here and help train them, or they'll come down with us and ride with us and learn the ropes. One of the guys has already been with me on numerous tracks where we've apprehended quite a few folks. Some pretty good ones too. Some pretty good cases.
That's awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to the future of the program. But
that's cool.
So we have a lot of problems where these guys in the 4-wheel drive stolen trucks, they think that they can just bust through a fence and get away with it. So instead of bailing out on the road, they've realized like, oh, a regular trooper or a regular cop can't follow me if I bust through a fence and drive through the ranches. So these guys will punch through the fences and destroy ranchers' gates, fences, property. And most of the time they, before we started, they just get away with it. Well, not anymore, because now they'll do that. I'll show up, I'll track the truck, or
yeah, truck's pretty easy to track.
Yeah, I'll track that truck down, and I'll find it where they're hiding,
they ditch it.
Or where they ditch it. And guess what? I got a dog now too, so I'm going to track them with the dog. And just recently, we had one where it caught on fire, like it burned. Like this ranch was like engulfed in flames, and so like now we're freaking out. Like, are there people in that truck? Like, what's going on? And man, I remember I showed up and agents were like I was like, hey, is there any sign? Like, do you see tracks? And they're like, yeah, I think they're right here. And I was like, I'll let you know real quick. And fortunately, I had my buddy that's in the school now riding with me to kind of learn. And he wanted to go with me on the track, and so he started to like leave the truck there, and I was like, "No, dude, there's a huge fire!
Right?
like the truck's gonna burn down." And he was like, "Oh,
they'll circle back, jump in your car, and drive back out."
So he was super bummed out, man. But so he gets in the truck and he starts driving, and I'm like, "Hey, just cut ahead, like this direction we're gonna go, or whatever." And so anyway, sure enough, Furia nails this track. Like, I just start walking her out there, and she's like, "Over here, Dad." Starts pulling me, and man, we tracked these guys for probably 3 miles or so, and we're tracking, like, they were just running down the road. And so I'm tracking down the road, and then all of a sudden it stops, and it breaks into the brush, and the brush was pretty thick. And I was like, well, the only reason they did that is because they know we're on them, right? And sure enough, I let my drone buddy know, and drone sees them.
I was gonna ask if y'all are using drones.
Yeah, we're using drones, air support, all that.
Yeah.
So anyway, they spot them and they're right over there. So Furia tracks them over, and we catch them, and everybody's all like, they're kind of freaked out, but we're real cool. We're just like, was there anybody in the truck? And they're like, oh no, everybody made it out. And we're like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank you. We were really concerned about that, but that was a pretty cool one recently.
Can you talk to them through the drone? Like, hey, you stupid fuck, if you don't want to get eaten by a dog, stop running.
I almost wish we could. No,
put a speaker on that drone.
No, we can't. give commands through the drone. Not with the ones we have or that I know of. Maybe the helicopters.
Okay.
But I haven't seen them do that. I know sometimes with the PA systems, like the public on a truck, they'll say stuff like.
So you could be flying over and just find like someone who'd been left, like turn to your right, that's north, walk when you hit the road, we'll pick you up.
Yeah. But usually by the time they're calling 911 and stuff, they're done. They're hurting. Yeah. Like we got to carry them out.
I'm going to have to just deal with jail and enjoy life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, or
catch and release
or processing. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever they do.
You know, a lot of places on the border, folks just walk across and get processed. Welcome to America. You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happens to them.
Is that
criminals?
Asylum.
Yeah. The criminals, obviously, the ones that are absconding from law enforcement catch, they get processed or they get jail time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, as long as prosecution's good. But last week I had 3 pretty good tracks. One of them was, like I said, it was like a pursuit, man. It went through 3 counties. This dude punched through so many ranches. And what was cool was like the landowners for the ranches were like, that truck just went through here, man. Follow me. And like they're out there in their gators, like because they know. Because I pull up and I'm like, hey, where'd they go? I'm trying to catch them, man. And the landowners love that. You know, because like they don't want these guys just getting away with thousands of dollars of destruction. So anyway, I'm following this guy on the gator, and then the truck came out the other side. We ended up finding it, tracked him for a pretty good while.
It's a sad situation for the ranch owners. It's like, man, I've had this ranch in my family for years, and now we can't even operate our ranch, nor can I really sell it because nobody else wants to deal with this shit either. Right,
yeah. And I'm very proud of my department and my agency for stepping up and trying to help where help's needed, and especially our program. I think that we kind of changed the game, or we're helping change the game. They were already doing it. I just don't think there was necessarily enough canines, and now we're getting enough canines out there to where we're starting to, in my opinion, make a difference.
There's no question that you're making a difference, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun too. So.
I bet.
Yeah.
Let me know when you need a ride-out partner. I'll come down to corporate.
for what we're doing, it can be a little bit more dangerous, I think, than.
I still got all my kit.
Yeah, I wish, man. Come on, we're hiring.
Yeah, we're hiring. So. I appreciate that, but no, my purpose is home now.
Yeah, I hear you.
But thank you for doing this. This is an awesome story. It's an honor to meet you, man.
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
same.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.